Industry 5.0 builds on Industry 4.0. Now, Industry 4.0 is very linked into things like automation, IoT and processes, etc. And what we're now saying is we're going into Industry 5.0. And when we start describing Industry 5.0, typically you'll hear about three key pillars. So the first pillar, as you can see, says sustainable industry. Now I'm going to go through each of these pillars in a bit more detail shortly. So we've got sustainable industry, we have a human-centric industry, and then the third pillar there is a resilient industry. So let's have a look at these in a little bit more detail. So the first is sustainable industry. So generally, when we're talking about sustainability, you might hear the term circular economy being used. And the idea is part of the manufacturing process. It's all about reducing waste, being greener effectively, and having a cycle of, the manufacturing process and that reuse. Trying to reduce the, if you like, depletion of natural resources is again quite key to that particular scenario. As we move on into human-centric, the major difference here is what we're saying is what can technology do for the human being? So rather than actually saying we've got the technology and automation and things like that, we're turning it around and saying, what can technology do for us? And it's very much to do with collaborative type industry. And you also hear the term collaborative robots or cobots being used in terms of how this interaction will take place. One key area when you start talking about human-centric is about retaining of skilled workers, and therefore having that sort of building on sort of the human element and relying less on just 100% robotics effectively. So you can see that's again one of the key pillars alongside the sustainability. Now the third pillar relates to a resilient industry. Now some of this comes out of the back of the pandemic, COVID-19, and when you start looking at things like a resilient industry with respect to things like supply chains, with respect to cyber physical security. And again, manufacturing processes already do an element of this anyway, looking at their processes, but it's all about making it more resilient and linking into lots of different areas. So you've got these three pillars, sustainability, human-centric, and resilience. So when you say, okay, Industry 5.0, when is it coming? We've then got to think about some of the challenges and some of the other aspects. So the first thing to point out is with Industry 5.0, there's a lot built on things like AI, linking into a lot of data analytics, digital twins, you'll hear that terminology. And the idea is we've made many, enhancements in those areas in the recent years. And again, that pushes it nicely towards Industry 5.0. There are many pilot projects with respect to Industry 5.0 happening around the world. So that's a good thing. The next thing just to be mindful of, it's not all straightforward. When you start mentioning AI into the mix, you then start linking into policies. We also need to think about policies to do with the environmental aspects. So when we start talking about sustainability, you're going to get different groups, governments taking a hold of this and saying, well, Industry 5.0 says we should be doing this. And therefore we need the regulations and the framework in place. There is going to be an element of a skill gap as we start bringing in this human-centric element. There needs to be a joining of those two worlds, and therefore there's a skill gap which we need to sort of start to think about filling. Next on the list there is investment requirements. Now, as we start talking about having a human-centric Industry 5.0, we start thinking about the use of artificial intelligence, digital twins, and obviously the technology and some of the analytics and the cyber physical security. All of this will actually cost money, and therefore we need to put that into the mix as well. So it's not just a straightforward, let's just do this. And then finally, we mentioned a bit about some of the frameworks and the policies. We've also got various ethical concerns with respect to AI and how far that goes, especially with things like digital twins and that pushing of information from a human side into a digital twin side, and what that actually means. So we've got quite a lot of challenges, but we are moving forward at a reasonably fast pace. And you can see that, in some places, in some areas of Industry 5.0, it's happening now. Other areas, specifically things like frameworks, policies, that's going to take a lot longer before that gets put in place.